Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. We have with us a very interesting guest today. Well, most of our guests are interesting, but it's kind of a different view today. Jodi-Odonnel-Ames has suffered through some difficulties. In fact, when I was reading about it, I said she has to be on the program. So, Jodi, welcome to the program.
Well, Don, thank you so much for having me. I am greatly, I appreciate this.
Okay, well, Jodi, first, tell us a little bit about your background, and then how you came to write the book, and then tell us about what you're doing. Well, first,
Sure.
your background and book.
Yeah, so my background is I was much like everyone else, um, went to college, fell in love, got married, had a baby. I was a teacher. Um, and my husband, Kevin, at the age of 29, started symptoms of what we found out a year later was ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a terminal neuromuscular illness. Most
Well,
people live 2 to 5 years. And that really started this journey that I'm on.
okay, but before you go further, most people know it as Lou Gehrig's disease, right?
That is correct. And on June 2nd, that was the National Lou Gehrig's Day.
Okay, so 2 years, he discovered he had it. What happened next?
So we learned he had ALS, and we had a 2.5-year-old at the time, and we just did our best to be hopeful and positive about the information we received. And we surrounded ourselves with good people and good doctors and lived our lives. But eventually ALS wreaked havoc, as it does. And Kevin passed away in 2001. At the time, although mentally he was the same funny, adventurous guy, he lost his battle. He was ventilated, had a feeding tube. He was paralyzed and speechless. And our daughter was 8 years old.
So what did you do next? That was 2008. So what happened next?
That was 2001. So I immediately started working with, well, first of all, I was severely depressed, obviously. You're in your mind, right? You're this young adult, and in your mind, you're making plans, right? And that's what we do as humans. We make plans. We think, oh, let's have another child. Let's get our second home. Let's get the next job. No one says, let's live with a terminal illness and try to figure this out. So our lives literally started going backwards. And I make the analogy of, as we were teaching our young daughter how to do these things and to become independent, Kevin was losing the ability to do these things and be independent. So at the time of his passing, I was in shock and depressed. And I sent an email out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was used to caregiving for him 24/7, and I wasn't sleeping. So it's hard to break that cycle. And I was at the computer, and I just said, I need to work. I need to do something and get out of the house and put this energy that I have that's really sad into something bigger and better than me. And so I started working with the ALS Hope Foundation, which led to my current husband, Warren Benton Ames. I met him there through a book that his late wife wrote. And a few years later, we got married, and that's when I became mom to 2 bonus children and started just really thinking about all that had happened to us. And it didn't just happen to my husband, who was widowed, and myself, who was widowed, but to our young children, and who were all under 11 at the time. And then I realized even more that they were caregivers, that, people would send cards to us for occasions and anniversaries and say, we're thinking of you, but the children weren't included. And these are smart, capable children who understand in some ways what has happened, and in other ways are just as confused and in shock as us. So I just started thinking about ways to provide hope for children whose lives have been affected by ALS. And from this table right here where we are, Don, it just came to me, Hope Loves Company, and started with $1,500 of our own money as a family. And I started listing all the things that would have helped our children, some type of group discussions for children about ALS, some books about ALS to gently explain ALS to them on their level, a camp, a family fun day, and a camp where all these families can come together, and children as young as 9 years old or 6 years old can look at another child with a mommy or daddy in a wheelchair and normalize this. One of the biggest things for my daughter Alina is she just kept saying none of the other daddies. Like, she just didn't have someone to talk about this to. And she was a very smart and curious child, and thoughtful, and really wanted to talk about it with someone. And I did have her in, a little counseling sessions. But the bottom line was, when the kids were playing in our neighborhood, her daddy couldn't play. She saw daddies throwing ball and daddies taking walks, and her daddy couldn't do those things.
So, okay. So, we'll go on. What did you do about all this?
So I created Hope Loves Company. I wrote a book. I solved some problems. And the one thing that really hit me was I found a quote online, and it was, "I've always wondered why someone doesn't do something about this." And then I realized I am someone. So Hope Loves Company is a national nonprofit that provides free camps, free books, free Hugs of Hope care packages, and free counseling for our children around the nation. So I started Camp HLC, which is a 3-day retreat where families come together, and sometimes those with ALS, who are still able to transfer and get around, attend, and their children, and sometimes grandparents attend. And we get this community, this ALS community together. So that's our biggest thing that we do. We also, our mission is to focus on educational and emotional support. So we send out books that gently explain ALS to families so that children and parents can have these discussions. We speak. I'm a speaker. I have spoken in 4 countries, and all around the United States. And I continue to speak not only about ALS, but about other topics as well, but to bring awareness around the disease, how it affects children and children caregivers. The very interesting thing is that, and sometimes as adults, we don't think about this, but children are natural nurturers. If you have 2 toddlers in a room, they automatically go up to one another, and they put their hands out, and they want to hug, and they want to kiss, and they're natural nurturers. And so what we have found is that many of these children are doing things like helping with grooming, helping with eating, sometimes helping with transfers if they're older children, helping with more chores around the house. It's difficult to, when you think about someone who's consistently losing the ability to do something. So with my husband, in 1 year, he was in a wheelchair. 2 years, he had a feeding tube, which meant someone had to constantly, 3 times a day, provide nourishment, at least 3 times a day. Within 3 years, he was ventilated, and within 4.5, he was, at end life and paralyzed. So you think about how that influences a family, right? What is once normal, daddy, mommy do things, and then children are part of that. And perhaps, parents have their roles and their responsibilities, and young children just, mommy and daddy take care of it. But when you think about the reality of this, is more men than women get diagnosed with ALS. And with young children, especially, a lot of times women are still home, and then dad's working, or even if two parents are working, one eventually can no longer work, and then one is eventually caregiving. So the whole family dynamics and what was normal is completely turned upside down.
Let me interrupt you here 1 minute. You say you have camps. Where do you have camps, and how can people find you?
Yeah, so the camps are currently in New Jersey, which we had in May. We have one in August in Massachusetts. We have one in Arizona coming up in the fall. We have one in California in the fall. HopeLovesCompany.org is our website for information, and we are on all social media.
Well,
So
let's slow down. People always slur over. Say it slower. Well, the website for people.
sure, it's Hope Loves Company, which is our name, .org.
Oh, Hope Loves Company. What a great title. How did you come up with that?
So Don, what happened was, and I'm of a certain age, I'm almost 60 years old. And we used to say, back in the day, we used to say misery loves company. Misery loves company, right? And what I recognized was that people who are sick, and not just in the ALS realm, but when you are already going through something difficult, and you surround yourself with other people who are, maybe not in a good place, who are miserable just by nature, people who look at the glass half empty rather than half full, that it made an impact on their quality of life. And so if you surround yourself with hopeful people, hope can love company as much as misery. That when you walk into a room, and if you go one way and you meet a relative, and that person's like, how are you today? This is a nice party. I'm so grateful to be here. And then you walk in another direction and someone says, oh my gosh, the traffic getting here and the food, it's horrible, and I don't even want to be here. That has an impact on you as an individual. And that's just a simple analogy. But when you're talking about fighting any adversity and being challenged, and we all go through adversity, it's a part of life, it's inevitable. We have a choice. We can surround ourselves with people who will be supportive and bring us some positivity and feel good moments, or we can surround ourselves with people who make us feel hopeless. And it's just, it makes a huge difference when you're facing adversity.
If I hear you correctly, you're saying surround yourselves with people that help you have hope rather than uh, uh, add to your despair. Am I hearing it correctly?
You said it perfectly, Don. Thank you.
Okay, I just want you have some profound thoughts. But before we go further, you written a book.
I did. I did. Do you mind if I show it to you?
Yes, go ahead.
Here you go. The book is called Hope Loves I'm sorry, Hope the Givers. The organization is Hope Loves Company, but the book is Hope Givers, Conversations and Stories of Hope. And that's the cover. That's me as a brownie. The one year that we had the funds for me to be a brownie when I was probably, I want to say 8 years old.
Mhm.
So that is
So
that picture.
the conversations of stories. Who are in the conversations?
Yeah, so what I decided to do, so I like to be around hopeful people, and I am sharing that since my loss, there are times that I still feel sadness, even though I'm happily remarried, but there are times, when milestones happen, and my daughter Elena just had a baby, and it's sad that my late husband has not seen that, been part of that. And when she got married, and there are still times that sadness happens. And I started a podcast during COVID because I felt those emotions coming back. I'm a people person. I like to be around people. And, we were all in the same boat. We were all stuck at home and worried and anxious and overwhelmed by what was happening with COVID-19. So I started a podcast, and it was called Gratitude to Latitude. And I just started thinking about my list of hope givers. Who are the people that when I think about anytime I smile, Don, there are certain people you just like, they come up in your mind and you're just like, oh, so happy and grateful they're in my life. And this list started growing. I'm like, wow, I have a lot of people who I feel that way about. And why don't I interview them? And interestingly enough, not only are these people those people, but they've all been through severe trauma. I have a friend who was in a freak boat accident and was burned 70% of his body. And he still lives with that pain every day, all these years later. I have a friend who was abducted. Um, I have a friend who had cancer twice in his teen years and has survived and now takes people up through the mountains, cancer climber, and takes people up in the mountains who have cancer to build confidence in this fight against cancer. So I just made this list and started having these conversations, and then it dawned on me that these conversations are powerful. And along with my upbringing, which was not public, prior to, I started Hope Loves Company, but I never talked about the fact that I was the first person to go to college, or, that I have a parent with mental illness, and just the things that have happened. All these stories together is a book about overcoming, choosing hope. I,
You were saying you're the first in your college to go to first in your family to go to college,
yes, I was the first in my family to go to college.
and you've
Actually,
and you've overcome all of these things. Well,
I have, there's issues of mental illness in my family, and addiction. And I, from a young age, I recognized how I could make that different. You know, I recognized that having a path and going to college and having a plan and making better choices. One of the things that I say in the book is that if we don't have the right foundation, which so many of us don't, right? If you don't have the right foundation, that's okay. That's okay. You can build your own foundation. You can, at any age, you know, I'm 58 years old. I can still build my foundation. And you can always come back. If you make mistakes, then reboot and say, okay, I'm going to make better choices from now on. And you know, members of my family have said, you know, we have happy lives and happy marriages because we've made different choices.
Mm.
My parents fought all the time, and it was hard growing up seeing that. And when you see that, you know, that becomes normal. So you have to say, you know, I don't want to throw something at my husband and make that normal. I want to be kind to my husband, and I want to have a relationship that is that's beautiful.
I'm going to interrupt you for now because we have a limited time. First off, your book again and put it up for the other for people.
Sure. Absolutely. So the book is called Hope Givers, and it is available on Amazon. And it's also available as an ebook or as a copy, you know, as a printed copy. But it's called Hope Givers, Hope of and Conversations,
Okay,
and Stories of Hope. So
thank you. Now, and your website again for people?
yeah, so my personal website is JOA Speaks On. And that's a way to get more information about what I do right now. So it's an interesting time for me. I am a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a student. I'm getting my master's in social work um, right now at Rutgers University. And I also volunteer at Hope Loves Company. So I serve on the board, and I spend a lot of time with the families that we serve, whether it's at camp or on calls,
Hmm.
and try to help them navigate this world of ALS with children.
Well, let me then bring you to my last question, which is
Sure.
um, I know a family, I have several families where there's been one child who's had a challenged child in one way or the other. And what I've noticed is that the siblings, boys or girls, learn to be better people by having to work with the other. I'd like you to comment on that before we end this program. What do you
Yeah,
say?
that is a huge observation, and it talks about adversity. And I think when we see it in the ALS world all the time, children who are caregivers, children who have been exposed to challenges and difficulties, they either learn from that experience, right, in one way or the other. And most of the time, we see them rising to the occasion. Sometimes it makes an impact that's negative, but primarily we see that children who witness and who have been called to help in some way in the family are the most incredible, independent, grounded, and aware young adults. It's amazing. We call them old souls. That's what we see. We see these children who become old souls who have an adult perspective at an early age and who are caring and compassionate contributors to this world.
And hope it seems to continue into their adulthood. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. I do agree. I know so many people, a friend of mine who just spends every day trying to make the world a better place because she lost both of her parents in a car crash when she was 16. And she knows that pain, she knows suffering, and she wants to make the world a better place. Yeah, your insightful comment was just dead on.
Okay. Well, on that note, we say, um, Jodi-Odonnel-Ames, thank you so much for a very interesting time together. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Don. I always appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.